What's up? What's happening? It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Warmed up today. Just did a YouTube live over on the W Sports channel, reacting to the two U.S. Women's National Team games. I was at Commanders OTA today. Obviously, that's where we're going to start the show and spend a lot of it. But I feel like I'm warmed up and I'm ready to go. Did some eyes on the ground reporting. Did a little bit of a live stream. Get the juices flowing, talk it into microphones. And here we are on Hump Day, rearing, rocking, roaring, ready to go. Lynnell is going to stick around, and in 30 minutes, we'll turn his microphone back on. It's 4:30 for Lynnell with us today. I appreciate him always. Ben Standig at 5 o'clock. But we start, Anthony Haynie, with our field trip today. Not only was I at OTAs, you were at OTAs. Good to see you out there in Ashburn.
It was great to see you as well. Quick question, can you see me?
I can't see you. Right
okay,
now,
I got to find the link.
Right now, yeah, nope, you are. What's funny is, so I'm at the home studio today, and Anthony, Thus and I look at each other in screens, which is funny because when I'm in the studio next to him, I also look at him through a screen. That's how the video stream works, and it looks like we're looking at each other. But anyway, the point is, I just see an avatar where Anthony's supposed to be right now. So I could put the avatar on the screen, Anthony. Look, it's Anthony's avatar. It's the generic StreamYard one. Anyway, we'll let you get logged in. Oh, wait, hold on. We're going to sub out avatar Anthony for real Anthony. There he is. Hey now. Yes, hey now. I feel like today's practice was about as exciting as our little interchange there. It was pretty boring practice today. They did get some 11-on-11 work, and that was fine. Jaden Daniels had a couple nice completions. He missed one. There was one where he both missed it and had a nice completion. It was late on a dig, had a double pump. I was standing with Logan at that point. Logan's just like, that's a nice throw, but like, it's too late, coach. Marcus Mariota, mixed bag. I think the most interesting thing, and Anthony, you and I were talking about this on the sideline, is they are mixing and matching DBs freaking everywhere. And I wonder how much of that is intentional just to like get different looks at different guys and get guys reps versus this isn't about us trying to figure a bunch of stuff out. This is how we play defense. And there's some guys that are out there that I think are interesting, like Dominique Hampton, the late round pick, the day 3 pick. He's out there in certain units with the starters. Like, I think he's going to play defensive minutes for them this year. He's going to play some snaps and possibly in some high leverage situations, including some of their third down stuff, some of their goal line stuff, some of their red zone stuff. So I think it's interesting to see the mixing and matching of DBs. Part of this, definitely, like their rotation of the outside corners between St. Juste, Davis, and Forbes. They're trying to figure out who they want to be their starters. They're not going to rotate those guys on a regular basis in the regular season. They're going to pick 2 starters and roll with them. And then if they have to change because of performance, they will. But watching all the different personnel packages mix and match with the safeties and the corners and who's here and who's there. And sometimes it feels like they have 11 corners on the field, nevertheless, or 11 DBs on the field, nevertheless, 11 defensive players. They just have so many guys out there. It's hard to keep track, but it's also just an interesting strategic and tactical observation because I think this is how they're going to play football.
Yeah, and I think also the fast pace of the practice in general also made it a little tough to keep track of everybody that was out there. I'm trying to account for who's all on the defensive side of the ball, and then when I look on the offensive side of the ball is being snapped. So the tempo was definitely good as well. But I think, as you just alluded to, the mixing and matching, Quan Martin, I didn't necessarily see him in the Buffalo nickel spot where he was a little bit. Last year he was more in the post. And he spoke about it last year, he spoke about it today after practice, just where he's been primarily. He talked about just being in the post as opposed to, being shuffled around. So I think that, again, points to just how versatile the defensive depth chart that we have is in general. And then also from an offensive standpoint, I think what they did today, they did a lot of play action stuff, working things in. And I guess we'll probably see a lot more of that come training camp. But I'm hoping that, we can lean on the run and then be able to, build off the play action. And I think they did a good job of that today.
Yeah, no, I think that's for sure. On the defensive side with Quan especially, I think he did get some run where he winds up down there. The rotating safeties, obviously it's him, it's Chin. But there's also a key spot where Percy Butler's in. And I mentioned Dominique Hampton. You've got all these guys that are rotating through. And Quan does wind up playing some man-to-man on Zach Ertz, who's having a nice little spring here, by the way. Logan loves that phrase. He knows the dark arts are out running. Sure does. That dude seems to get open a lot. And he got one on Quan today. There's some other, plays that are just really nice from him. But I think that mixing and matching, but Quan primarily playing in the post, I think is how it's going to be. I think Martin and Chin are going to be more or less your starting safeties, which is interesting because that leaves Derek Forrest as an odd man out. Where does he fit in? And he played really well last year, and he was a guy that I thought it'd be, hey, who's playing with Derek Forrest? And it might be not the case. Offensively, I think the thing that stood out to me that was the most interesting, and I'm trying to think back, and I feel like the previous 2 weeks, this wasn't as true, but their biggest plays offensively today came over the middle of the field. And especially with Jaden out there, which is great because that was an area where at LSU, he didn't attack the middle of the field a ton. And it's like, okay, can he not see the middle of the field? And we're talking relatively speaking, like it's definitely on his tape. But did he attack outside because he had awesome outside receivers and that's where the offense was designed? Or did he struggle over the middle of the field? And his ability to understand coverage. My favorite play of the day was he undressed coverage with his cadence at one point. Gives a big, set up, and Sainer still is in the slot. He starts jetting out. Davis, I think, was the corner on our side, the left, defensive left, offensive right, and he starts dropping back deep. And I actually didn't even look at the rest of the defense to see whether that was an inverted 2 or a 3. Which would be pretty easy if I'd actually looked at it. But the point was the corner dropped off. The outside corner dropped off deep. I think it was actually an inverted 2, or maybe it was cover 6, and I just didn't look at the other side. Point is, outside corner drops off. Slot corner buzzes to the flat, and it leaves a void in front of Davis, but kind of with the window being where Sainer still was. Or if he had dropped off into the hook area, that's not open. And instead, that area opens up, and Mitchell Tinsley runs a nice little hook, curl. It's not a dig, but it's like it wasn't really a curl. It's kind of coming into that vacated space, the start of a crossing route, if you will, and he sits it down, and Jaden drills him. And there's no hesitation in the processing, but he saw the coverage before the snap, and he understood where the hole was going to be. And it's not something that's like, oh, I got man-to-man on the outside. I'm just going to throw it to my outside guy and hope he makes a play. It's I'm reading this out over the middle. Or he's reading stuff out and seeing Zach Ertz down the field running into vacated space. And so hitting these deeper in-breaking routes over the middle of the field is an essential part in the NFL of your offense. And these are hard throws because you got to get over linebackers before safeties. You got to do it fast enough that corners can't snap off from the outside and undercut these things. Like, it's got to happen right now. And I feel like their big plays today, there weren't a ton, but it happened on that versus there was like one fade ball they threw to the outside. It was like a cover 0 situation. And Jaden and Diami weren't on the same page. But other than that, there really wasn't a lot to the outside guys today, especially those vertical routes down the field, which I think we anticipate being a big part of the offense.
Yeah, and I think also the other thing that I was excited to see, the situation of football, Dan Quinn talked about in his opening remarks to the media today, and he was talking about, being able to put these guys in these situations because you're only going to have a certain amount of time. And we actually seen it. I think it was Mariota up at quarterback, and they literally didn't get the snap off a second left to go. And it was just more so one split second faster, they wouldn't have been able to, get that last play off. And I think that's
I want to run through that drill next. Let's do that because I think that was an interesting drill. It's not even 2 minutes. It's 28 seconds, balls on the 20, no timeouts. And offense down a touchdown, need a touchdown, no field goal situation. So how did each quarterback do? We'll let you know. And then the other big news story of the day is Dan Quinn addressing the Brandon McManus release for the first time. I thought it was interesting what Quinn had to say. We will play that for you next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. And Anthony, before we, in about 45 seconds here, get into one of the more unique drills of the day that we saw at Commanders OTAs, I have an announcement to make.
Do you need a drum roll?
I guess. Helps if you turn your mic on before you do the drum roll. That's really, you had one job. You had one freaking job. It's actually an announcement about an announcement.
Uh-oh.
Tomorrow morning, 9:40 a.m. on the Sports Junkies, we have a big station announcement to make. 9:40 a.m. tomorrow on the Sports Junkies. Big announcement. That is all I'm authorized to say at this time. I wish I could provide you with more detail. However, I will just simply say what my boss told me to say, and what he allowed me to say, which is that tomorrow at 9:40 a.m., there's a big station announcement on the Sports Junkies. End of announcement. All right, in Ashburn today, the Commanders down to business. It was OTAs 7, 8, and 9, I believe Dan Quinn said this week. The voluntary. Next week, of course, involuntary, a.k.a. mandatory. It's minicamp. We might be doing the show from out there in Ashburn as well, so that'll be fun next week. But we, by the way, show tomorrow from Capital One Arena, and same for Friday ahead of the Mystics Sky and Mystics Fever game. So excited for that here on the Team 980. But this was the first time that Quinn and company got into 11-on-11 work. And one of the ways that they did the 11-on-11 work, of course, they ran some plays out in the middle of the field like every team does, but they got into a red zone clock management situation. So I guess 2-minute red zone technically, but it is 28 seconds on the clock, no timeouts. You're down 6, first down, dead clock. So you've just completed a pass down to the 20, called timeout, first down. All right, now we got to go finish the drive. And Jaden Daniels and a version of, I guess technically they were the twos. I feel like there's some bigger play, some ones that mixed in with that group too. But it really was Jaden Daniels and the twos actually went first in this drill. And it was interesting because they started with a screen, which is an interesting play call, but not one that's like completely out of bounds or one that's completely crazy. It's risky to me because if it doesn't pay off, you have a chance of a big pile of bodies that you have to uncover. What you're hoping there is one of two things. One, it totally breaks down for the defense and you score. So if you can get the execution on the screen just right because they're not expecting it, and you get some man-on-man situations and a guy can slip a tackle, you might just score on the thing. So it's a way to take a shot on a defense that might be in more of a preventative type of zone and maybe even get some blockers on the second level unencumbered out on the wing. That did not happen. The other thing that you're hoping is if your receiver catches it and can't get to the end zone, he can get out of bounds because it's running towards the perimeter. And in this particular case, that did not happen either. However, the Commanders were able to uncover themselves quick enough. Now, granted, this is not a tackle situation, so they didn't have to undo a pile, but they get to the line again with about 12 seconds left, and Daniels is able to spike it. So that then leaves 2 plays for the end zone. And what I really, really appreciated from Jaden Daniels and his trip through this drill is on third down, he realizes he's got nothing, and so he just throws the ball through the goalposts. Clock stopped. We're dead. It's all fourth down, nothing. Fourth down, they bring a cover 0. He tries to throw a jump ball. Receiver slips. And actually, Anthony, this was one of the funnier moments of practice. Receiver slips. Nick Whiteside has a pick. He drops the pick. It doesn't matter. The game's over. Defense wins. But Percy Butler's screaming at Whiteside. And so some of the other DBs are like, what the hell, Whites? And Percy Butler's screaming at him. That's 50 push-ups because he dropped the pick.
Easy.
Easy
Drop
pick.
and give me 50, man.
Yeah. Drop and give me 50. Drop and give me 50. It just shows the mentality in terms of turnovers. And not that that's the difference in getting it, but like it's part of it. It doesn't matter that we won the game. You had an easy pick. You better catch that son of a gun because that's what we do around here. And so ultimately Jaden and company don't score. But they get 4 plays off. They give themselves a chance. And in a cover 0 situation, what you want to make sure you don't take a sack. And throwing a jump ball one-on-one, trusting your guy is kind of what you got to do in that situation, unless you have something drawn up for an immediate winner. And I think they just had like a 4 verts on. And so Jaden picked his matchup, and it didn't pan out. But that's fine quarterbacking. Marcus Mariota and the ones then go up next. And I forget what happened on first down, actually, Anthony. I think they had a completion over the middle of the field. They did, because that was the one where like Big Phil committed a penalty on the defense. They didn't call it, but they complete a ball. I think it was like a slant or something. They whistle it dead, and then as the receiver is trying to run back and hand the ball to the ref, Phil knocks out of his hands, and they caused a huge not like kerfuffle, like people were fighting, but like people were yelling at all kinds of different things because that's a delay of game on the defense. That's a penalty, and the clock stops. So it should have been that, but the ball gets knocked out, and the receiver goes and chases it, as opposed to them just getting a new ball from the sideline, and then they have to it kind of messed up the drill. So then they ultimately though get the ball set, and on second down, or no, maybe they spike it, and then that on third down is when the smack out of bounds. No, because on third down, I think they considered it dead, and they were just like, okay, pick up with the spike it, so they spike it. So that was second down. Third down is when the big mistake happens. So on third down, Mariota gets a little bit of pressure, rolls like a little bit, moves in the pocket, and he hits. I think it was Eckler. It was on the far side of the field.
Yep.
It was Eckler. Yeah, so he hits Eckler, and Eckler gets tackled inbounds. And they run to the line of scrimmage, and they quasi get a play off, but they're not set, flag, offsides, and the game is over. And it's those kinds of details that they're going to go back and watch and be like, hey, Marcus, we need this ball to be better placed so that Austin can get out of bounds. Or Austin, you need to get out of bounds. And working on that stuff now in the spring and emphasizing it hopefully leads to better late game execution coming up in the fall. And again, if you want to freak out about one rep or one set of downs in a training camp drill at voluntary OTAs on June the 5th, I would highly recommend changing how you're expending your energy. But it is the kind of thing that, as a coach, you're going in and you're correcting. You're like, hey, at the very least, Jaden, you and your crew, you got 4 plays off. We need to find a way to execute. We need to find a way to score. But it is, I would say, the better. That's better than what the ones did, which is you didn't even get off 4 plays, and that's not good enough. So that was that drill. Anything else from that drill that stood out, Ant?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, I guess the defense did what needed to be done.
That is true.
But I did like Jalen Daniels throwing the ball away on that third down, just because he had nothing, and he knew he couldn't risk, taking a sack there in that moment. So, yeah, that's all.
Yeah, no, that was good. All right, the big news item of the day, real quick to hit this on the way out. Dan Quinn asked a number of questions, including one from John Keim at the start of the press conference today. It's the first time we've seen DQ since the Brandon McManus release, and this is what Quinn had to say about it.
Yeah, and I think, number one, I think you guys would all understand this is under investigation, so I can't comment a lot. But what I can say is a little bit about what I told the team. And I think, like most things, not necessarily related to this, but as a lesson, let's make sure you always, let somebody know and tell. There's usually a whole bunch of people that want to be part of the solution. And so when you have that, whether that's for this team or any team or a parent, that kind of communication allows you to, come up with some solutions. So, like I said, not, specific to this, but it was just a good lesson, to always, have that conversation, it's usually much more difficult in your head than it is really having the actual conversation. And so just wanted to make sure I got a lesson out to the guys as we're going through it. So we did release, Brandon, I found out some of the information on May 27th, and then we released him on June the 3rd.
So I think that it is worth noting here the kind of culture that Dan Quinn is trying to set here. Of course, in part, they released Brandon McManus because of what he was accused of, and that in itself is enough to potentially release somebody. But you have to, for as strong as I feel that like those allegations are not the type of thing that get made up against someone, and there's tremendous statistical evidence to prove that that is the case. It's not 100%, and you're innocent until proven guilty in the justice system and in a court of law, and there's a reason for that. And so you have to let the investigation play out from a legal standpoint for sure. But as a team, you don't want to necessarily deal with the distraction unless the player is like worth the distraction, and there's basically no kicker that's worth the distraction. And so there's just a reality that is part of it. But also it is very clear that Dan Quinn was not happy with the fact that he found out about this at this stage of the game. This lawsuit is not new. They've known these allegations were coming. I guess the lawsuit is new, but the allegations are not new. And the fact that they did not know about it is a problem, and it's a trust issue. And I think maybe they don't sign McManus if they know that's coming up front. And McManus is like, well, I got some money. And sure, maybe. But realistically, I think once they knew that the lawsuit was coming, had they come to Quinn and come to Peters and been like, "Hey, this is happening. We want to be upfront with you. We don't want you to hear it from the news." Then this maybe gets handled a little bit differently, and maybe they give him, "Hey, man, like we're gonna let the process play out, and if this gets resolved before training camp, then we'll keep you, and if not, then maybe we'll cut you at training camp." But the fact that they didn't feel like they could trust him and they got surprised by it is unacceptable. And I think that Quinn telling that to his players is good, because while hopefully no one has anything like this come up, if, say, you're in a traffic situation or you get a ticket or, God forbid, there's a bar fight or whatever nonsense happens. I mean, basically all year or all summer, coaches just hope their phone doesn't ring from the wrong number. But if it does, they want to hear from the players first. They want guys to know, hey, you can trust us to help you as a person. We'll make the football decision, but at the end of the day, we don't want to find out something from the news. We don't want to find out from a reporter calling us for comment. We want to find out from you. You better be upfront. You better be adult about it. And I think that's a great thing for DQ and AP and everybody over there to establish from a trust standpoint. And also, this is where the relationships that Dan has built really matter, because he wants guys to trust him. And it's not that he's going to like cover up stuff for them. That's not what we're talking about here. But as a public-facing employer, you don't want to find that stuff out the same time everyone else does. And that is a perfectly reasonable ask. And the team also has resources to help you depending on what the situation is. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Lynnell Willingham standing by. He is going to join us next here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 9.
Hello. How's practice? Good. I don't think it's boring. I envy all of you that have gotten out there. Since I've been working here and doing this is the longest I've gone without seeing anything yet. And I'm already talking 9, 10 wins. You wait till I see him in person.
I mean, gracious.
I want, and this is what we'll ask you tonight whatever time you join us, because the Nationals are making things very difficult. I saw a lot of tweets about the quarterback. Say what you want. I think there's a lot of things you can learn from 11 on 11 during minicamp, during OTAs. So that's what I'm curious to know.
What about it?
How did the quarterback look?
He looked fine. I mean, he missed a couple throws. He missed a couple of reads, but largely good. He gets the ball out. He was the only. What I think has been interesting about Jaden so far, which is both unsurprising, but also, I don't want to call it annoying because it's not a bad thing, but I just want to know. I want to see what happens when he takes off. I want to see him run, but he does it because that's not who he is. He's a passer, and so he tries to extend plays. Like Mariota got out and ran today. What's his face? 16. Driscoll
Hartman?
got
Jeff
out and ran today. Hartman didn't get any team reps. Driscoll got a couple, but mostly it was Mariota and Daniels. They both got out and ran a little bit. Jaden had a couple of plays where he extended, but there hasn't been a play yet where he tucks it and takes off. And I'm excited for when that happens because I know it's going to be electric, but it's also a good thing that he's not looking to do it. Now, when he gets in an actual game, I hope that not that he looks to do it more often, but he's obviously incredibly talented in that regard, and so he's going to have to do it. But the fact that either his instinct or his discipline to not run in practice, A+, excellent, good thing, even if I want to see the electricity of his speed in person.
I think it's a good thing too, but I'm surprised to hear that because I think they're going to have to use his legs a lot.
Well, they're also not practicing a ton in the run game right now, so it's not like they're practicing any design quarterback runs, and perhaps they will in August when they get pads on. But they did run the ball a little bit today. Actually, one of my favorite plays in practice, for funny reasons, for comedy reasons, one of my favorite plays in practice. I'm not sure, Anthony, if you caught this. They ran a zone read, or what at least was a zone read look. Maybe it was inside zone, and but the quarterback's carrying it out just because. And it was Driscoll. And Driscoll hands the ball off, and I think it was Chin was crashing the edge, and Driscoll just goes, "Hands up! I don't have it. Please don't hit me."
Literally said that?
Well, I mean, I don't think he literally verbalized it, but he put his hands up as if to say, "I don't have it. Don't do anything silly."
And I heard you now. I feel like I'm jumping all over, but
that's my job
because I haven't been out there yet. All of my questions, I rely on you to answer them.
Okay.
Which is why I'm so happy.
What a responsibility.
I know. That's why I'm so happy that you're out there because I probably trust your knowledge more than anyone else that will respond to my text messages to come on the show. So let me phrase that properly. You mentioned someone that I think is going to end up being the sleeper of the class.
And that's Jeff Driscoll.
No. Well, you mentioned him in the last segment.
I'm so happy that Anthony's face paid off that joke. He looked at me so confused.
That would have been bad.
That would have been bad. Well, I think Jeff's better than Marcus, but that's here nor there. But
we don't have time for that today.
You mentioned Dom Hampton.
Yeah.
Dom Hampton played sort of an enforcer role on Washington's defense and can hit, and I think has physical specimen. Is like 6'4".
He's monstrous.
Big. He can run. You talked about him getting real snaps in the defense during the regular season. I can see that being the case. They're really interesting in the secondary.
I think the dime linebacker spot is, I don't want to say it's his to lose, but like I think it's his. I think actually no, I do want to say it. I think it's his to lose based off how they're lining it up. It's a sub package. It's not that it's a.
But they may be in it a lot depending on how well
they
he
might
plays.
be. That might be. And so like you can play, because the thing is like, you know, dime is enough. There's enough iterations of it that it could be him, St. Juice, Forbes, Martin, Chin, and Sainer still like all out there. Like you could have maybe another bigger body out there, Derek Forrest or a Percy Butler out there as well, and just have a million. I might have named one too many players, but like the point is,
six and dime, right?
He's going to be in there, yeah. He's going to be in there potentially with a lot of other DBs, and so if some of these teams spread it out to try to run it, he becomes essential. But I think the other thing that's really interesting is watching like kind of his usage so far. Again, very limited snaps here, but they do put him on a Zach Ertz or a big tight end, and he's got the size, speed, strength to run with those guys and not get overpowered at the point of attack. And that's a really valuable asset in a modern NFL defense. And so the versatility he gives them, I think, is really interesting. And for a guy to be that late of a pick, come in and, I mean, he's not running with the ones that he's going to play 80% of snaps every game, but he's clearly got a role defensively that they plan for him, and then who knows what the ceiling is from there.
I think it's exciting.
I think it is too.
It makes me more confident that all the guys in the class are going to be used at some point. The other question I have, when they are going 11s, I don't know if you're allowed to say this. You better be allowed to say this, Craig.
You can ask the question.
Who's lining up at left tackle?
I believe today, I don't think it was 100% of the time. I don't know that it was 100% of the time, but I definitely saw some Trent Scott reps today.
Trent Scott, okay.
Now, I do think Korn was out there some. Cornelius Lucas was out there some. I know Cornelius also worked in some at right tackle with the twos. So maybe for today only, right? Because they have shown this, right? Where, Forbes, for instance, is not running with the starters one day, and then the next time we're out there, he is. So today might have just been a Cornelius Lucas is the second right tackle day, and Trent Scott's the starting left tackle, but I wouldn't read too much into that. Brandon Coleman played some left tackle today. Logan was telling me he's got an overset problem. More on that on a Take Command edition to be recorded tomorrow. That's something that popped up on his college tape as well, so they're obviously going to be working on it. It's June. There's a lot of time. But Trent Scott definitely got a fair amount of the reps today at left tackle. So take that for what it's worth, which is probably not much other than he's in the mix.
So with $44 million to spend, do you see them investing in any post-June 1 vet?
That discussion next on the Team 980. Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Lynnell Willingham with us, super producer Anthony Haynie out in Ashburn today as well. And so we were talking about the left tackle spot, and Lynnell, you raised an interesting question. They have $44 million of cap space still, and you asked me, would I spend it on anyone in particular? I'm going to ask you that question first. Is there someone out there where you're like, yep, positional need, dude's available, I want to spend some money?
So there's things you gotta balance here if you're Washington. So I think it's too early right now to know whether or not you have a need there because you haven't put pads on, and the same guys that are available now will probably be available after camp. So I think it's good discussion for now, but realistically speaking, that move, if it needs to happen, won't happen until July. But then you run the risk of like stunting a guy's growth by taking reps away with a veteran, or do you just figure they're not good enough? That's where like the coaching staff's gonna have to make that choice of like, is it worth taking reps away from Brandon Coleman at left tackle? Do we think he'll be able to grow into the starting left tackle at some point during the season? And if the answer is yes to that, then I don't think you go out and sign a left tackle. I think you let him take his lumps, and he'll get better by practicing every day. That being said, if there is a name, DJ Humphries, man, I definitely would take a flyer on DJ Humphries.
So I am with you on Humphries because he's played for Cliff Kingsbury, and he is also someone that is not going to take away reps from anybody because he's hurt. And so my only question would be is if you sign him and then you don't need him because Coleman winds up being ready, like, then what? And I kind of think at that point, if you really don't need him, you just cut him.
Right.
But you're not going to sign him for a lot of money. And I think if you are Cliff, and I mean, Cliff knows DJ obviously very well. He drafted him, the whole deal. And if you are like, you know what? I like him. I like him how he is in the meeting room. I think it can help Brandon Coleman with film study and all that kind of stuff. Like, you bring him in to have another voice in the room that is familiar with you in the same way that Zach Ertz is, and you get it in that O-line room, and that's really helpful. And so I kind of think DJ Humphries is such a unique case because he's high upside talent, former first-round pick. He is injured, so he's not taking away reps. Not even from your position battle guys. Forget Brandon Coleman. He's not taking any from Lucas. He's not taking any from Scott. Like, you are having the current guys battle it out. But he is merely an insurance policy for the middle of the season that if Coleman's not ready, Scott isn't good enough, and Lucas gets exposed with the higher number of snaps, then you're still okay. Or you at least have another option, I should say. And because he would start training camp on PUP, he's not costing you a roster spot. He's literally costing you money, and that's it. And you have money. It's not my money. It's Josh Harris's money. From a cash standpoint, a cap standpoint, it's not costing you anything. I have zero problem bringing in DJ Humphries.
Yeah, me either, for all the reasons that you just listed. I wonder, left tackle is one of the spots. How is edge look? Now I feel like I'm interviewing you almost.
Yeah, you're having me on overtime tonight at 8 o'clock. I already said I'd come on with you. I don't know why you don't know what time that was. Also, I don't know why you just moved your camera, but now we look like we're a human staircase. I'm the top step, and then someone bops off my head onto Anthony's head because he's slightly lower situated than me.
It's a better.
And then you're somewhere down on the bottom step. Why did you do that?
A better comp is like we're like the top last 3 steps of wood floors where you're going up top because we're brown, and then you're like the rug that's on the top step. That's more of a good comparison.
Fine.
We're shining like you put some.
The point is, you should have. Well, I don't know why you moved your camera. I don't know why you did that. I can barely even see you in the frame.
I was trying to get a look at the forecast out here in AVR.
Oh, okay. Well, you can turn around and do that when you're not on camera on a live streaming multimedia endeavor that now looks amateur because you just decided to move your camera. So the edge position, that's a hint, Lynnell. Put it back where it was, bro. How many times, how many hints do you need to bop yourself in the head here to get here? Whoa, now we're on a ride. Okay, there you go. Thank you for for being where you belong. Okay. As for the edge position, it's impossible to tell. Like, until we get into padded work, it is just impossible to tell. I do think it's been interesting to see some different guys out there, including, obviously, Jamin Davis, where he's getting some reps on the edge. Today, there was one team rep where I think he was in as a linebacker, but he wound up on the edge blitzing. And, it's no pad, so who knows what they see in the result. But it also is the kind of thing where, like, I imagine Luvu does some of that stuff too. And so does Jamin come in and play linebacker in coverage situations potentially and let Luvu be on the edge? Is Jamin on the edge? Like, I think this is one of those, hey, we're going to teach them now all how to do it. And then in training camp, we'll let them figure it out type of deal. But I also kind of would ask you the same question is like, is there an edge out there available that you're like, yeah, sign me up. Let's spend some money on that pass rusher?
Probably not at this point in
Same.
free agency because edge is a premium spot. And if
Right.
they were
Good ones
worth
get
it,
signed.
Right. I just still have that big question mark about when it's 3rd and 7+. What is, I guess it's not even a question. Like it is, clearly. What's the best way for them to generate pressure in those situations? Because I still continue to believe that the strength of the pass rush obviously is on the interior. But with the athletes that you have on the edge, with Luvu and Jamin, guys that theoretically can drop into coverage and be your hook defender from the edge rusher spot. They can drop in to be your flat defender. They can get so creative in how they want to generate pressure. And when you have all these tweener hybrid guys, and that's how I'm going to start looking at a Derek Forrest and a Quan Martin now and a Dominique Hampton, is like guys that can do multiple things, but they're all best going forward. This is going to be, seems like, and I want you to confirm this, an attacking style defense that doesn't wait for anything and that it's going to throw the kitchen sink at you. And if that is the case, and they can generate turnovers, it all goes back to that 10, 9 wins. They're better on that side. I think the ceiling for the team changes. And obviously quarterback influences that discussion as well. I haven't seen them yet, but everything that I hear, I music to my ears.
Yeah, no, I think that is definitely true. The turnovers change the game because it inherently prevents the other team from scoring. It gives you extra possessions. And, if they can have some return guys, pick six style like they have in Dallas the last couple of years, that would be cool too. And that, especially if it's Emmanuel Forbes, because then it's like, hey, got him for cheap and he's doing the thing that they drafted him for. I think that there is definitely probably a need for more blitzing than they did in Dallas because throwing the kitchen sink at a quarterback when you're in Dallas is, hey, Micah, go. You don't need anything else.
Right.
But I do think the versatility helps because it's not just like offensive linemen like rhythm, right?
Yeah.
I want to block the same guy every single snap. And I'm going to learn his moves.
Yeah.
And I understand how he gets off. I understand the timing of all that. I understand his favorite moves. I understand his counters, whatever. If on 1/3 down, you're blocking Deron Payne because they kick him outside as a tackle, against a tackle. And the next one, you're blocking Jamin Davis. And the next one is Frankie Luvu. And the next one, it's Dorrance Armstrong.
You have no clue what's coming.
Yeah, good luck getting in any kind of rhythm. And so I think that versatility will be good, but also it's the kind of thing where maybe you're good at blocking Deron Payne, but you're terrible at blocking Frankie Luvu, so we're just going to put Luvu over you every time, and until you figure it out, and then we'll mix it up with someone else. So I think it is going to be a pass rush by committee, which is not as good as having a potential 18 sack guy, but this is why it's a multi-year rebuild. Those guys are really hard to get, and I think the hope is that Brandon Coleman becomes your left tackle of the future, and you enter wherever you are in the first round next year, able to take a premier edge in the first round.
Bigger problem that they had last year post Chase and post Montez was not necessarily the pass rush itself. Dorrance Armstrong is the only guy that I think can go set a good edge, and he's a little bit light in the britches. Like Cleveland Farrell, is that your strongest guy?
Farrell's an edge
Farrell's
setter.
your guy. That's your edge setter.
He's an edge setter for sure. And then
do you have two of those?
I mean, I think you're hoping that KJ Henry comes along. He's in. I mean, Armstrong's fine.
He's just more of a tweener.
Yeah, I mean, Dante Fowler's obviously a pass rusher.
Yeah.
But then, I think that is definitely a question. But it's also schematically how do you get your guys flowing? What kind of speed do you bring? And maybe you don't have to do quite as much when guys like Louvu are in pursuit and Wagner's in pursuit. And also Wagner's setting you up to be in a better position before the snap because he's seen everything there is to see in the NFL 25 times over. And if you can get, alignment alignment comes first, and Bobby Wagner can help you a ton in that regard. All right, you've got overtime tonight, 6:30 on the Fan, or what's the deal?
I have no clue when it starts. I really don't.
Is it because the Nats are playing right now?
Well, they're supposed to be playing right now. It's a rain delay.
Oh,
I know.
That's right.
You don't miss this at all.
I've had some of there was a portion of my career, Lynnell, that was where you are right now. That's what I'll say. And I do appreciate the reliability of this, but it's a necessary step, kind of like we were earlier. Although apparently you were steps and I was carpet at the top, because we can make jokes like that and they're funny.
There we go. All right.
Were you paying attention to the last 30 minutes of radio that you did? I feel like you were just on autopilot.
That guy is a piece of work, man. I had to sit here and listen to Chris Russell act like he knows anything about women's basketball. You know what he said? And maybe you guys will agree with this, but because I know you aren't going to objectify the women. You're going to just look at them as what they are, athletes.
Yeah.
He tried to tell me that Kelsey Plum, as great as she is, was more recognizable and a bigger name than Aja Wilson. I almost jumped through the glass here. And I know she's now that when I say recognizable, it becomes interesting because it then becomes more than basketball. She's got 2 MVPs, 2 Finals MVPs, deep.
I mean, the lack
what
of.
More do you want?
Why didn't we talk about this? Why didn't we talk about this? I asked you what you want to talk about.
Because I'm tired of the conversation. Honestly, I'm worn out from it. We talked W for the first 90 minutes of the program. Had full phone lines. It was amazing.
I mean, I love that, but also, it
was built off the ignorance of that caged monster that hosts middays. That's all right.
We're gonna go to break because we're gonna prevent Lynnell from getting himself fired. Ben Standig is next on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live as well on YouTube at the Team 980. And it is time, just after 5 o'clock, for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Our guest today, the one and only Ben Standig, of course, Commanders beat reporter for The Athletic. What's up, dude? Good to chat on the phone after seeing you in person today.
Yeah, I've retreated to the home front, cooling down a little bit, and trying to figure out what to write about today.
I was going to say, what's your biggest, always the $1 million question, right? What's your biggest takeaway? Because I feel, Ben, like today was one of the more boring football practices I've covered in a while. And considering the intensity and tenseness of last year around this time with the sale pending and EB, coming in and just kind of the edge that everyone was on, to have like a nice, relaxed football practice in the middle or at the beginning of June is kind of what this time of year is supposed to be, and that's what it felt like. That was my biggest takeaway. What was yours today?
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I know everybody wants to hear, how does Jaden Daniels look and about some other guys, and I'm kind of like, I don't really know. It wasn't an action-packed session. I'm not exactly sure why that was the case. They were doing 11 on 11 a little bit. That was for the first time. And I don't know. I guess typically we're used to, because there's no tackling, the fireworks typically are coming if the offense is doing something. And it wasn't there, there wasn't a lot of highlights on that regard. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're also getting used to your point, of getting used to like what normal is. It's been so long that it's like, oh, we don't have to like have a, and not every single thing that's happening is like some big momentous deal. It's just a team going through practice, and I think they seem to be happy with where they were going. But yeah, not a lot to like take away, I would probably say, from the practice itself.
Right, none of it feels existential. And last year, everything felt existential. And part of that, I think, too, is probably because last year, like even from a football sense, there's this massive question of, is Sam Howell going to basically save everybody's bacon? And this year, it's like, this is year one of Jaden Daniels, and there's a long runway ahead of us with all of these guys, from Jaden to Dan Quinn to Cliff Kingsbury to whatever. Like, the only way that it's not a long runway for maybe Cliff is if he does so well that he gets a head coaching job offer and takes it somewhere else. But I feel like part of this is just that there actually is like a long-term thinking, and it really is hard to have anything consequential come from any singular moment on such a long-term plan.
Right. And also last year, we had Eric Bieniemy, and this was his, first opportunity to really be the main play caller. He's controlling what they're doing in these sessions. So I think there's a lot there on that front as well. But yeah, I mean, there's a certain normalcy to what's going on. I do think they're being efficient. There was, I would say, there was more energy, more chatter than we saw at times in the past. I remember I said to somebody today on the sideline, we always used to notice when Montez Sweat and Chase Young were talking junk because you could hear them, even if they were like across the field. And now I'm realizing that part of it wasn't just that they were doing that; it was quiet enough, relatively speaking, to hear them. And now there's Joe Witt Jr., the defensive coordinator, saying he wants a chatty defense. And just in general, I think these guys seem to be fairly engaged on both sides of the ball. So that stood out. But yes, I mean, it's not, in terms of what we're talking about, what we can see wasn't the most, fascinating time to be alive out there.
Ben Standig with us here on the Hoffman Show. I'm sure practice was not as clean as it seemed to us. That is the nature of it. And I'm sure if, even with our level of expertise, Ben, if we got our hands on the film, we could probably find a mistake or two. That is it's the nature of watching a practice from the sideline. But what do you make of the fact that there doesn't seem to be any, or nearly as many, I should say, major mega mistakes this year with both how they're installing the offense, where there's not these big calamitous, like, oh, we got to run the play, start it over, or I don't feel like we've seen any major coverage busts on the defensive side either. What do you make of the lack of like the big one in terms of mistakes so far?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting that, first of all, defense typically is ahead of the offense, right? As we know, this time of the year and, even into early training camp. So I think we're seeing some of that come into play. And obviously everything is incredibly new, not just Jaden Daniels, Marcus Mariota, obviously getting the majority of the other reps at quarterback. And, they're still in some stage of learning the offense, their teammates, what's going on the other end of the field. I mentioned before, this was the first 11 on 11, so now that's getting incorporated. Again, no tackling, but, at least having the line, be a factor. So, yeah, somebody was one of the players we spoke with after practice, I don't remember who, said, he was asked about Jaden Daniels, he was asked, has a play sort of stood out from him so far? And he mentioned the one from a couple of weeks back where he threw a perfect shot down the right sideline to Jahan Dotson. And that was a really good play, but that was the one he cited. It wasn't something that happened 10 minutes earlier. It was something that happened a few weeks ago, which, again, it's not about Jaden Daniels. It's just to say, that's just kind of how practice went today.
Ben Standig with us here on the Hoffman Show. One of the guys that has definitely been at the center of things and the kind of turn of direction of the franchise on the field is Bobby Wagner. I know you wrote a piece about him in The Athletic. For those that haven't had a chance to read it yet, like, what's your favorite anecdote from the story and the favorite thing you learned about Bobby Wagner and what he's bringing to this otherwise, I won't say inexperienced, because there definitely are some guys with some, but certainly there are a lot of guys that are on Bobby's experience level league-wide, so I'll say less experienced defense around him.
Yeah, obviously we're talking about a guy who's a future, Hall of Famer, umpteen-time Pro Bowler and All-Pro and things like that. He's led the league in tackles, including just last year. So I had a chance to talk to Seahawks GM John Schneider recently about Wagner, and I'm like, so give me some type of thought when something that reflects to you what he's meant to your team and what it says about him as a player and what maybe Washington is going to get, et cetera. And you're thinking he's going to talk about his ability to call the defense and make such a sure tackler, or maybe he's going to talk about his locker room presence as a leader. And instead, he talked about Wagner's confidence. He's not arrogant at all, but just his confidence that showed. But he specified that because Wagner negotiates his own contracts, and he's doing it therefore against Schneider and their main contract guy. He pointed to that interaction as an example of who Wagner is as a person and his confidence, because he's really interested in the business and he's learning about that, and he's like, hey, I'm going to figure out how to do this. And yeah, he negotiated his own deals. I don't recall hearing people say Bobby Wagner got, bad contracts. And I think it was just, there's always a phrase, to be interesting, you've got to be interested. And, for him to take on that challenge, meaning Wagner, I think something that for Schneider really stood out. Obviously, the playmaking itself, he was part of, the Seattle teams that went to 2 Super Bowls and won 1 last decade. But, that was interesting that of all the things he could have picked, that this guy's willingness to, negotiating a contract is hardball. It's not, it's not always, cut and dry what's going to happen. And that stood out to the GM of the team that drafted him. I just thought that was interesting.
No, that's really fascinating. Dan Morgan, the general manager of the Panthers, is a former middle linebacker who played with Carolina for a while until he actually had a neck injury, I believe. It was that caused him to retire. So there already is one current NFL general manager who is a former middle linebacker. Do you think that is in Bobby Wagner's future, or is this just kind of more of a personality quirk rather than a career pursuit? Or does Schneider think that?
Well, Wagner's already started his own entrepreneurial business, or at least he was a co-founder in one back in his Seattle days. So it looks like the business world may be part of his future. I know he had a lunch the other day with Magic Johnson because Magic Johnson tweeted out a photo of the two.
Yep.
And in the conversation, it wasn't just about, joining the Commanders and helping this team, but it was also about learning, Magic's talking about helping him learn the ropes of the business world. So it may be more of that side of things as opposed to an NFL front office, but we'll see. I think at the end of the day, Wagner's going to have options in these various directions because he's, there are certain positions where athleticism and talent isn't enough, right? I mean, you have to really be able to read the room, so to speak, to understand what's going on out there even before it happens, to have good communication skills. And obviously middle linebacker is one of those spots. And I think that he's demonstrated that over and over again. And it's one of the reasons why they wanted him. I mean, again, I think to me, this is a bit of a, rebuilding season to say the least. So it wouldn't be an obvious choice to go with an older linebacker, but they clearly were like, hey, not only is he a good player, we want him to help set the tone to help these guys understand what it takes to win. And that's not something, even for Hall of Famers, that's not something you would do with everybody. So I think this says a lot about how Dan Quinn and others view him and what Wagner has demonstrated in his career, beyond just being a talented player.
No doubt. A few more minutes quickly here with Ben Standig on the Hoffman Show. Ben, of course, the Commanders beat reporter for The Athletic. And Ben, I can't believe I haven't mentioned this in the show yet today because today, apparently, we didn't know this when we showed up, at least I didn't, marks the end of an era. Or the end, I actually misspoke there on accident. I said error. It really was an error, but it's an era. That hideous turf field, field 4, if you will, in Ashburn. We get there today, and it's being torn up. So for those that have been out to the practice facility in Ashburn, there's 3 grass fields, and then there was an AstroTurf field, like true AstroTurf. It's concrete covered in carpet. And they have taken up the carpet and seemingly the concrete, because, Ben, we saw dirt underneath today. I feel like there's a million jokes to be made. I actually walked up to the Commanders PR people, the first people I saw, and was like, so where are the deer going to poop now? Because that's really what that field was for, seemingly, since 2015 and I got here. But what does this signify that the Commanders are continuing to make these kinds of upgrades, and specifically that useless piece of space is now going to actually become a practice field for them? Like, is this significant, or is it just kind of a fun little thing that's happening here that a lot of us are chuckling about because that turf field, no matter, even if you're John Keim, it feels like that turf field has been there your entire career covering that team, not being used for anything.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how significant it is in terms of their preparations for a season. I'm presuming they're going to put down another, grass field there and have it. They kind of can get by right now with the 3 that they have, but I'm sure obviously any opportunity to have it for different reasons could be valuable. It's even possible for the rest of the time that they're here in Ashburn that maybe they figure out a way to put, they're not going to upgrade the building at this point, but maybe there's a way to add, another part of, upgrade the facility by adding something there on the field. Maybe it's like an extra weight room or something along those lines. But I do think it's symbolic, though, if nothing else, because, for all the negatives that we talked about with Dan Snyder and the list is long, I think one that got overlooked a bit was he basically just stopped spending on helping this team in any real way. One of the problems at FedEx Field is the age is not the issue. It's just that it wasn't taken care of. And that's why they've had so many issues. And similar here, like this field could have been dug up at any time, but obviously it costs money. And, I don't know how much it is, but it's, it's a pretty significant job. And, clearly at some point, he decided he didn't want to spend on these types of things. So I think it's just another example of where, however it's going to help the team incrementally or a big deal, Josh Harris is willing so far to show, hey, let's do what we need to do to make this thing better. Because he said it literally was just a waste of space. And now, again, whether it's another practice field or they find another way to use it to help the franchise, it's another sign of how Josh Harris is willing to do these things where it just wasn't getting done before.
Totally. And, as you said, they're not going to change the building at all, but they definitely are upgrading inside. There's tons of people, like the business people, they've just kicked out of their offices and be like, you go work in College Park now. We need this for football. So I think, to me, Ben, the thing that it actually does signify, which is not new information, this is just another step, is that they are not going to settle with what they have because they're going to move soon. Whether that is the practice facility or the stadium, they're making massive investments in FedEx. They're making massive investments in Ashburn, and they refuse to settle and kind of take what would be a pretty easy route out and just be like, yeah, we're going to get you a new one soon. They want to maximize everything they're doing right now while also looking ahead towards the future. And I think that is something that, considering the last guy didn't even invest in anything, like the difference you're going to see is massive in terms of kind of the happiness of people to work there, but also it should translate to better results on the field because you can get better people and have them do better work.
Yeah, obviously we know there's a stadium that's going to be coming at some point, but, it may not be until 2030 and they have, there's nothing's been finalized yet, so we don't even know when it's going to be. Jaden Daniels is starting his career now. 2030, he has a 12-year career, right? That would be like half of his career. So just to simply stand idly by and say, well, we'll just wait before we do anything else with either what's going on in Ashburn or at FedEx or the old FedEx Field, Commander's Field.
Oh yeah, that place.
That would be, that's literally kicking the can down the road. And if you're going to try to build this thing up, look, everybody who's reasonable understands that Josh Harris can only do so much with some of these facilities, but do something. And, he is doing that. And hopefully, that helps the team in preparation for games and the actual games or whatever else they have to do until they get, the more modern facilities.
For sure. I have asked when they're going to put radio podcast studios in. I was told not imminently, but it's also not off the table. So who knows? Maybe the Hoffman Show and Standig Room only could be from a facility out in Ashburn as well. So I'm just throwing that out there. Josh Harris and company, if you're listening, we'll take our shows on the road. Last but not least, though, Ben, you're such a big hoops fan. I'd be remiss if I did not ask. NBA Finals, who you got?
Yeah, look, I think both teams have, their, all-star players. Luka Doncic, obviously, especially in that last series, showed people why he is arguably the best player in the game, or at least with him or Jokic. And Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, all they do is win, right? I mean, they haven't won the title, but they've continually had deep runs into the playoffs, and they got back to the finals again. I think it's going to probably come down to, unless Luka is just, the guy we saw in that last game against Minnesota for the whole series, I think it's going to come down to the role players. And I think for Dallas, if PJ Washington is hitting threes, assuming Boston's going to do whatever they can to slow down Luka and Kyrie, then I think if Dallas's role guys led by PJ Washington make shots, make the right plays, I think they get it done. So I'll go Dallas in 6. Maybe I don't want the Celtics to win, but I'm going to go Dallas in 6. I promise I'm being a real analyst, I swear.
No, I hear you. It's so hard because Boston's clearly the best team, but I also kind of always just pick the best player in the series, and that's definitely Luka. So, but Tatum's close enough that it might come down to Boston's depth. So it's going to be a fun one. At least that's what we thought. Minnesota-Dallas would be fun too, and then the Mavericks kicked their ass. So who knows? Ben Standig, everybody. You can read him in The Athletic. Always appreciate you, sir, and I'll see you next week out for minicamp.
Awesome, man. See you then.
That's Ben Standig with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, Logan and I had a conversation actually similar to what Lynnell and I talked about at the end of the last hour. Do the Commanders need to upgrade personnel-wise right now on their offensive line? Take command for you next here on the Team 980. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. Our Commanders pick 6 at 6 will be at 6. It's amazing how that works, Anthony. What a brilliantly named segment. Pick 6 at 6, 6 biggest storylines at 6 o'clock. Who came up with that? They must be a genius.
You sure it's not at 6:15?
No, it's at 6.
Just making sure.
It's right there in the name.
Right.
6 o'clock. We give to you. I learned how to say time in French in Duolingo the other day, and I haven't had enough lessons in it yet, so I can't repeat it.
I know how to say it.
It's. Six is 6, but 6 heures de something. What is it? 6 in the afternoon.
I don't know how to say that.
I thought you just said you did.
I thought you were talking about the word time.
Oh, how do you say time?
Tiempo.
That's Spanish.
Oh, yeah, you're right. My bad.
Oh, my God. You want a more intelligent conversation? Let's sub Anthony's box out. Let's put Logan Paulson in. We'll let Anthony recover from that absolutely international moment of genius. Logan and I on Take Command earlier this week talked about whether or not the Commanders need to make a change along their offensive line. Is it as big of a weakness as people think it is going into the summer and into training camp? And obviously, what have we seen thus far, even though it's not much in the spring? And are there any other positions, cornerback perhaps, that need to be addressed? That is Take Command that we will play for you right here on the radio. You don't have to go find it in your favorite podcast app. Nope, we're going to play this segment for you right now here on the Team 980. Continuing on Take Command. So corner is certainly an area where a lot of people have circled Logan and said, we don't know what we got here. We don't know who the starters are. Is that considered a need on this roster, both top end and depth? Feels like you got a couple of really great number 3 corners potentially, but do you have a 2? You have a 1? Do you have 4, 5, and 6? When you look at this roster now, is a lot of people are having this conversation crossing over this June 1st threshold where there might be another wave of cuts. Although a lot of people that have been cut with June 1st designation were actually cut a while back, and now the salary comes off the book, or parts of the salary comes off the book now that we've crossed into the 6th month of the year. But, Logan, when you look at the Commanders roster through this first part of OTAs, where do you think they could still potentially realistically add and improve, either entering training camp or maybe even the next big wave of cuts is truly at the end of training camp where some more veteran players might become available?
Yeah, I think, you look at the roster and you kind of say to yourself, like, corner, I think I'm really glad you started there because, like, I don't think they're going to add anybody there, but I do think just kind of understanding, like, what the roles are, how the defense is going to work, and who's going to be able to best be maximized by Dan Quinn and who buys in the most and who kind of fits the culture is maybe the most compelling story of the offseason. Again, I guess they could add a guy like Gilmore. I think he's still rehabbing, still working on his shoulder, I believe, down in Texas. But right, Gilmore, is that correct? He was in Dallas last year. Stephon Gilmore, you're talking about? Yeah, Stephon Gilmore. Like they could potentially add a guy like that if pieces don't develop. But if I'm Gilmore, I'm probably thinking I want to go to a team that's going to win right away, be more of a contender. But I think, again, like it's who develops, is it Michael Davis? Is it Benjamin St. Juste? Is it Emmanuel Forbes? And who can kind of fill out that roster spot or fill out that position group? But I guess I would be a little bit surprised if they added somebody. It's not impossible, but I'd be a little bit surprised if they added somebody. I think the one that I've just got circled is the offensive line, really, quite honestly. It's like, obviously, like I think the core, they've done a good job in free agency with Biotish and Cosme, I think, are good cornerstones. I think people are sleeping on Wiley and how challenging his role was last year, given the style of Eric Bieniemy's play calling. But left guard, to me, even Allegretti, Chris Paul, is still a little bit of a question mark. And then as much as I like Cornelius Lucas, and I think he can play, like there's a reason he's one of the best swing tackles in football and not one of the best tackles in football, right? His skill set is very, very good in that swing tackle role. When he's had to play, he's done a good job. It'll be interesting to see if they believe that he can be the guy long term, because if they think that, or even if they think they can get you through 8 games, then it really comes down to Brandon Coleman's development. And I think it's an issue. I was actually having this thought experiment with myself this morning when I was driving around. It's like, if we had drafted Amarius Mims or, Jordan Morgan or, Kingsley Sumatai, are we as a media community that worried about this selection? And my answer is probably not, but I think that that's probably short-sighted because we have name familiarity with those people. We'd still be starting a rookie left tackle. And if you look at offensive line play, rookie left tackles tend to have a hard time. So I think Brandon Coleman, given his athletic profile and given his measurables, has just as good an opportunity to be a starting left tackle as those other guys, right? It's just we are not as familiar with the name, So I think that's something I would just kind of call attention to is like, you're really asking Korn to do a good job holding on the fort. You're asking Coleman to be developed. And I'm not saying he can't do it, but those are question marks. And so I could see how a fan, even myself, would be like, is there anybody we can sign? And I think you brought up a great point there. Like the left tackle market is not one where guys just randomly come free. Like the Charles Lynnell thing was like a total aberration when that happened.
Yeah. No, 100%. And here's the other thing that I would say, though, about like especially Mims, but even those second-round guys. I feel like if Coleman was taken in the second round, not the third, people would be like, the short term we got to figure out, but at least we have a long-term plan. I think the fact that Coleman is an unknown, not just an unknown, because all these guys are unknown, but like people are like, is he a tackle? Is he a guard? Can he play tackle long term? Like people don't feel like the Commanders have a plan long term or short term at left tackle, and that is freaking them out. And I get it, because if you don't have a short term or long term plan at left tackle, you should be freaking out. However, I actually don't think that that's the case. I think that's a misrepresentation of the facts, which is their plan is Brandon Coleman is their left tackle of the future. Now, if all of a sudden he doesn't play very well and they wind up with a top 15 pick next year and there's some stud left tackle available, it's not going to stop them from taking said player and either kicking Coleman inside or moving him to right tackle or whatever the hell they want to do.
Right.
But I do think they see his upside as this is a potential top end, like top half, maybe even top 10, considering his movement skills and his length and his strength and how raw he is as a player. Remember, this is a kid who didn't start playing until high school, had to go to JUCO, and then has really only had 1 year of solid left tackle play, or of consistent left tackle play because the injuries his senior year at TCU to other people, which has caused him to bounce around. But in his 1 year of starting left tackle play, he was really damn good and started in the national championship game.
Right.
So at the end of the day, they have a plan, even if a lot of people don't see it otherwise, which I think changes this conversation, whether you're willing to kind of take their word for it, take Adam Peters' word for it, or we're doing our own kind of composite evaluations of, they think he's a tackle, but all these other smart people think, not just like analysts, but like other people in the league thought he was a guard, so actually they don't know what they're doing, and thus it's Cornelius Lucas or Trent Scott or bust, and that is not a good left tackle plan.
Yeah, and I think that, again, like, I think a lot of people tend to, and I'm guilty of this too in the evaluation, is to bucket guys as guards, tackles as guards, because it's safer. It's like you're looking for something very specific at tackle. You're looking for kind of this prototype. We mentioned Amarius Mims, and like he's like what you're looking for, like a tall, angular athlete that's big but is also very powerful and they could move laterally aside. It's like it's a very specific thing you're looking for. And I think as an evaluator, you're always like, oh well, if they don't have that, then they're probably a guard. But I think like when you look at Coleman, like just as an example, I think he's a really interesting case study for evaluation. Like everything that tackles need to play in the NFL, he has. He's got great feet, he's got great length, he's got great anchor. And so it's just about, can you get him to develop and learn the position and how to play at the NFL level, right? Because again, you mentioned like the novelty of football to him. But as far as if I'm taking a shot on somebody in the third round, like he has like first round tackle measurables, but it's the indecisiveness of like, where does he play that you get him in the third round. So that's why he's such an exciting guy to me. And again, you're putting a lot on the offensive line coaches to make sure he gets ready. But I do think if you just, and this is something I do usually pre-process, but I look at everybody's arm length, everybody's 40, and then for offensive lineman height, weight. And if you look at that, like I would stop and circle him and be like, this guy is someone to keep an eye on just based on that alone. And to get a guy like that in the third round is extremely, extremely valuable. So as much as it is like he doesn't fit this kind of height, weight, mold of a traditional tackle. The other stuff is extremely tackle centric. So it would be pretty fantastic. Again, if you got a starting left tackle in the 3rd round, how awesome would that be? That would be fantastic, you know? And I think like you said, there is a very reasonable path for him to get there. But again, like I understand a lot of the fans' concerns as to why they say, oh, we need to bring another veteran in. My question is, who would you bring in? Like it's like you got to kind of make it work with the guys here at the moment, I believe.
Yeah, I think the one name that I'm really intrigued by is DJ Humphries, because he played for Cliff and he is not going to be available. Like, you can probably sign him whenever. I would probably sign him at the beginning of camp and let him rehab in my building so I can keep an eye on him, and also be involved in all the offense and the install and let him mentor Coleman a little bit, all that kind of stuff. But he injured himself in late December last year with a big-time injury. I think it was an ACL. And he's not going to be available till the middle of the season. But if you're going to be waiting to the middle of the season for Brandon Coleman's development or another option, I would give why would you put all your eggs in the Brandon Coleman basket?
Right.
Now, if you think DJ Humphries is going to be available and he's not going to sign without checking in with you, then why would you pay him? It would be the other side of that, because then if you don't have to, you don't have to. Or if he doesn't come along from injury, like there's some risk there on the financial side. But with the amount of cap space they have, I'd probably just sign DJ Humphries at some point and be like, all right, we're either going to and he'll start season on IR, or on PUP, and he won't come off and take a roster spot until he's ready to play. And if you never need him, then great, you never need him. But at the end of the day, like, if you're going to rely on either Trent Scott or Cornelius Lucas to buy you 6 to 8 games anyway at maximum, then might as well have as many options as possible when you come out of those 6 to 8 games. Other than that, Bakhtiari's missed a million hours of time, or a million games over the last couple of years. I don't know that that's that intriguing. And everybody else, like good left tackles aren't available because good left tackles are hard to find. And so at that point, I probably just wait to see if one gets cut at the end of camp, and that sometimes happens. We call that a Donald Penn around here. That's what happened at the end of 2019 when all of a sudden Trent Williams was like, no, I'm really not playing. Like, what the hell is wrong with you guys? And they emergency had to sign Donald Penn. And they did. So that can happen. The Leno thing is, as you said, an even bigger aberration. That didn't happen this year, where there's not like any really candidates that are potentially going to get cut because some rookie's having a great camp. And other than that, like, I think you're just reliant on, and this is the other point I want to make real quick before we wrap this thing up, is I also just don't think it's as dire of a need as a lot of the mass media, national media says, because they look at the numbers and the sack totals and everything from last year, and I just don't think they appreciate how bad the play calling was and how set up that offensive line was in combination with Sam Howell's skill set and some of the weak points in his game to fail. And so it's not surprising that they did. They're not as bad talent-wise as people think they are. They're not awesome. I'm not telling you they're great, but they're a lot closer to average than people want to give them credit for.
Yeah, and I'm with that. I think I'm 100% with that. I think that's a great analysis. The one thing I would just say is I think the question mark on the left side is something that people are having a hard time with, but I think that's why you have training camp, right? You have training camp to see who the best 5 are, and let's get those best 5 guys out there. And you go out and you sign a guy like Allegretti, you sign a guy like Biotish to help kind of, if you do have to play a young guy, you've got 2 guys with some experience. They can come in and be like, hey, young guy, this is who we're blocking, this is what we're doing. Make sure he's on the same page, right? And people, I know Cornelius Lucas is much maligned, but he's played well when he's had to play, and he's blocked some really good pass rushers in his time. So I understand it's uncertain, but I think you bring up a great point. Like, if the play calling is different and that group gels the right way, like I've been a part of some teams that have had some on paper bad offensive lines, but they're fine. Like, they work because they're better together than they're some of the individual parts. And I think that's what this group has the potential to be. And again, that puts a lot of onus and responsibility on coaching. But one of the things I love and I appreciate about Dan is he understands the value and he appreciates the importance of coaching. So he's going to make sure that the guys that he brought in, the staff that he brought in, are going to make that happen, which is, I think, something that is very important. So,
no doubt. And last but not least, sacks are a quarterback stat. We said that last year a million times, and the way Jaden Daniels is processing so far in OTAs,
Feel good
looks
about
like
it.
those numbers are going to be a lot lower this year than they were last year. All right, that from Take Command. The rest of the podcast you can check out in your favorite podcast app, including the free Odyssey app. We had a discussion about Emmanuel Forbes, and we also talked about the Justin Jefferson contract and if that affects the Commanders at all. Nevertheless, what it means for the rest of the league. Pick 6 at 6 coming at 6. The 6 biggest storylines of the Commanders' day and some of the biggest sound bites, including what Joe Witt had to say about how his defense is coming together. A little fun next, though, here on the Hoffman Show. And a hot topic that we can't seem to escape because, well, you'll see. Pick 6 at 6 coming in just a few minutes here on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980, 4 to 7 every single day. If you're new to the show, that's us. I'm Craig. I host the show. That's at the Hoffman Show. Craig Hoffman. That's me. Anthony Haynie, super producer of the program here as well. It was not 2 days ago that as all the WNBA discussion was happening, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what I thought was actually a good discussion about a lot of these topics between two DC sports legends in the host of PTI, Mike Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser, coming up at 6:30 today. But I said part of the problem that the W is having right now is they have a lot more attention on a league that is not ready for attention in some very key areas. It's just not run well. And that goes to the commissioner's office and bragging about private flights on our show. And it took us 1 week to fully put it together. And then 2 days later, in an interview being like, it'll be ready fully after the Olympic break. And you're like, ma'am, you just said what? But but another thing I mentioned, Anthony, and part of the reason I think that the Caitlin Clark, Kennedy Carter situation gets out of control and the narrative runs wild is because it was not adjudicated properly in the game. If the referees call a flagrant foul, it feels like the justice has been done and people generally keep it moving. And sure enough, last night, the same exact crap that it fits in the narrative, thanks to refereeing, happens. Where Angel Reese is treated poorly. And the league has fixed this today. But if you missed it, Angel Reese gets called for a foul she doesn't like. She says something probably, but generally is just like dismissive of the ref in a way that I feel like a lot of players are. But she gets teed up. And then she gives the meekest of whatever. It's kind of like, you teed me up. All right, whatever. I'll just go. I'll move on. And the ref tees her up again and throws her out of the game. What are these refs doing? And by the way, the answer, sadly, is the same BS they've been doing for years. Like, the refs, and we see this, unfortunately, I mean, I don't think that anyone's going to be like, yeah, the refereeing in my favorite sport is awesome, because nobody likes referees. It's just part of the gig. But I think in the NFL and the NBA, there's, like, we also understand that it's a hard job, and generally speaking, these guys and women that do it are exceptional. Dude, as someone who's been a women's sports fan for a long time and also like seen college women's officiating and lower league men's officiating in college, it is so bad and it's embarrassing. And part of it is like the league, to defend the league a little bit here, is the league has been under-resourced for so long that they can't afford the best of the best. And they can't afford to give the officials training and be the professional grade. And I think this is like part of the existential fight, I think, often for women's sports in general, because they have traditionally been underfunded and under-resourced in a way that is just completely inappropriate, is by far in the NWSL and the WNBA, the best thing about the league is the players. And I think in the last couple of years, the coaching has gotten a lot higher to that standard. We've seen it definitely in the NWSL. The NWSL coaches 5 years ago had no business coaching at the highest level of anything. And they got kicked out by a bunch of owners that were like, we have the resources to go get the best coaches. And now the coaching and thus the quality of play in the league is much higher. I think that's happened in the W. You're seeing coaches get paid in the W in a way that it's better to be a W head coach than it is to be an assistant in the NBA or at the college level. And so you get better people doing the stuff. The players, this is the highest level, and it's never been an issue. But from front office people to referees, the under-resourcing of these leagues has caused absolute crap level of officiating, amongst other things, running administration, events, marketing, etc. And now that the league has caught fire in a great way, and there are more eyes on it, the ineptitude at any number of levels because there still are really bad coaches and inept GMs and the whole thing. And part of that's just sports. But the ineptitude at multiple levels, Anthony, I think is being exposed in a major way, because that's what happens when you put light somewhere, is you see some things. And there's a lot of light right now in the WNBA.
I mean, I think you said it perfectly.
Add it to the reel. Add it to the reel of things where I planned on having more of a back and forth with Anthony, and then I got rolling because I'm the host of the show, and that's kind of my job. And then I said the thing, and Anthony's just kind of like, "Oh, now you want me to talk?" Terrible job out of me, Anthony. I left you high and dry.
I was about to say, what do I add here? Good job,
in.
Craig.
Yeah. Hey, sometimes that's a producer's job.
Hey, there it is.
Just inflate the ego of the host. Now there's hundreds of, if not thousands of people listening being like, "Sir, you and your ego do not need any kind of a boost." When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, it's our Pick 6 at 6, the 6 biggest storylines from the Commanders' OTAs today. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, which you can also utilize, Anthony. I'm going to mix up. I feel like people get in a rhythm. They're just like, yeah, we get it. You're live on the free Odyssey app. Make sure they're paying attention. Did you know, Anthony, that if you have an Amazon Alexa, you can go, hey, Alexa, play the Team 980 on the Odyssey app, and voila, your boys will be there. I don't know why I turned that into an accented piece of information, but it's true.
I did not know that.
Oh, well, now you do. Do you have an Amazon Alexa?
I was about to say, I also don't have an Alexa, but my mom does, so I'll
Next
tell
time
her.
you're at your mom's house, just be like, hey, Alexa, play the Team 980, and see what happens. I know what's going to happen. It's going to play the Team 980 via the free Odyssey app. But you can do that. So the Odyssey app, not only on your phone, but, of course, you can listen online at theteam980.com and via your favorite smart home device, specifically Alexa. All right, so with that information for you, of course, you can watch us on YouTube, too, at the Team 980, live every single day from 4 to 7, including tomorrow's show, live from Capital One Arena, ahead of Mystics and Sky. We'll be there Friday ahead of Mystics Fever as well. And also, don't forget, huge station announcement tomorrow morning, 9:40 a.m. Sports Junkies have a big station announcement. That is all I'm authorized to say at this time. But make sure you're listening at 9:40 tomorrow morning. But right now, all right, that's enough plugging of the things, Anthony. It is time for the biggest Commander storylines. It's time for the Pick 6 at 6.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at
I have the numbers as well.
6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level and build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
Yeah, you did. That guy is Dan Quinn, who had to address what felt like a little bit of an old school issue today. It's the nature of the NFL. It's a lot of dudes, a lot of players, and that occasionally means some of them are in hot water of some kind. Brandon McManus released earlier this week. This is the first time that we have seen Quinn since, so he was asked about making the change at kicker.
Yeah, and I think, number one, I think you guys would all understand this is under investigation, so I can't comment a lot. But what I can say is a little bit about what I told the team. And I think, like most things, not necessarily related to this, but as a lesson, let's make sure you always, let somebody know and tell. There's usually a whole bunch of people that want to be part of the solution. And so when you have that, whether that's for this team or any team or a parent, that kind of communication allows you to, come up with some solutions. So, like I said, not, specific to this, but it was just a good lesson, to always have that conversation. It's usually much more difficult in your head than it is really having the actual conversation. And so just wanted to make sure I got a lesson out to the guys as we're going through it. So we did release, Brandon, I found out some of the information on May 27th, and then we released him on June the 3rd.
So there you go. It took 6 days to do it, but ultimately that's not that much time once you're told. But I think the bigger takeaway for me, Anthony, if we want to officially make this number one, fancy button, please. You
Number one.
You told me you had the numbers.
The numbers usually go before. I had exited out, so I had to pull it back up.
You know what? That's fair. Mark it up again is another time that I have failed you on the show. I feel like I've done that too much in the last 2 days. I might have to bring back the fine board for myself. That or I'll just buy you lunch. Okay. The bigger takeaway, though, for me in terms of what Quinn says there is the idea that they didn't know this was coming. And whether it was mentioned as soon as they knew that they thought the lawsuit was coming, or really that these allegations have been out there, like not publicly, but that McManus knew that there was a potential lawsuit coming, they should have told them up front. And if the Commanders have made the decision to sign him anyway, like that's on them, and that's a different conversation. But ultimately, I think what Quinn is saying is to the rest of the team is, guys, if something happens, tell us. Because we can't, depending on what it is, we may be able to help you. We may not be able to help you. That's not a guarantee that we're going to keep you or cut you. But you got to give us the information to give us the best chance so that if whatever happens is a kind of situation where we can help you or we can do something to keep your spot on the roster. Because say that the second McManus finds out there's a lawsuit coming, he tells Quinn and Peters and whatever. Do the Commanders preemptively come out and basically, or at least be ready and say, this is under investigation. Brandon told us this might be coming. We're going to keep him on the roster for now, pending the outcome of the investigation. He's going to be away from the team. We're going to sign another kicker. And you move on. You move somebody else. And if by training camp it's still ongoing, maybe at that point you cut bait. But it's the middle of June right now, so let's see what happens. Maybe. But McManus never gave him that chance. And they want to make sure that they have the best chance to make the best decision possible for the football team. And when you can't trust a guy to let you know what's going on, that's not possible. So I appreciate that message from Quinn, even if I don't know that it ultimately would have changed the outcome in this particular case, considering this seems to be headed to some sort of trial. All right, number 2, Anthony. Play the number before we do the bite.
Number 2.
All right, number 2 is about the guys that are still around and the culture that is being developed. Of course, Tyler Biadasz, no stranger to Dan Quinn, even if Quinn was coaching the other side of the ball when they were both in Dallas. But here is the new Commanders center.
It's building this like a winning culture and doing things the right way and building our identity. I mean, we have a great opportunity to rebuild this culture here, and it's a fresh start in all areas and all aspects of our game here with the Commanders. I think it's coming from even ownership to the new GM, coaching staff, players coming from different other ball teams. So I mean, it's one of those things where you truly feel grateful for this great opportunity to build it the way you want it. And I think everyone has the same mindset of building your winning culture and also just building that chemistry. And this is such a crucial time of these next, practices coming up and next week with the mandatory minicamp to really do that. And we just started really going 11 on 11. So, building that chemistry with one another and being all out there and, working with, different personnel groups and, different teammates beside you, and, like for my position, for example. But it's been great. Honestly, it's been a lot of fun.
I think there's something really fun about building something because there's no real, you don't have to tear anything down. You don't have to, you're not trying to change something. It's just like, there's a blank slate ahead of us. Let's build this thing. And I think in a team setting, there is an ability to pour into each other that is not necessarily there if you're adding on to something that already exists or trying to change something that already exists, because there's a natural curiosity and inquisitiveness that comes with a blank slate. You're just trying to get to know someone and you're asking about their life. You're getting to know them. Everything is new. And so you build it and you take the things that you really like and you pour into those. And, if you don't get along with someone, that's a totally different story. But from a football standpoint, if there's something you don't like, there's still kind of this newness that allows for that conversation. No one's stuck in their ways. Everyone's open-minded. And I think that's the thing that is great when he talks about ownership on down. The only pressure that there is from ownership, from GM, from coaches is to be the best version of yourself, to try to find out what that is within the context and football tactics of this team. And I can imagine that's really exciting and refreshing. Now, when you get in the middle of the season, you actually got to play games and there's a scoreboard. If you don't have some of that stuff figured out and you're getting your ass kicked because you're actually not that good, that newness becomes not quite as fun real fast. But I do think this part of the year is very exciting and very fun because everything is new. It's all learning. It's all teaching. Everyone feels like they're in the same boat, and everyone's kind of coming at this because there's no one that has standing, right? Terry and John and the guys that were here, well, the coaching staff is new. The guys that are on the coaching staff that are trying to set the culture, well, the building is new. A lot of the players are new to the coaches and the building. So I think the fact that everything's new to everybody is kind of what's exciting about what the Commanders have going in this time of year. We'll see if they can build it up fast enough to be competitive in the fall. Number 3.
It's
our pick 6 at 6. 6 o'clock, 6 biggest storylines here on the Hoffman Show. Number 3 is the details. All this big kumbaya stuff is great, but eventually you got to put some time on the clock, a score, and hopefully the score is tilted in your favor, and you have to keep it that way as that clock winds. Situational football, very important. It's why Dan Quinn wanted to make sure to work on it, even though it's just June.
Yeah, we're trying to work the situation side of the game as much as we can, and knowing that about 70% of our league, the games are 8 points or less, and so it kind of speaks to the importance of what can happen at the end of the half or the end of the game, and so much of that can tie in to special teams and how you're working that part of things. So all 3 phases working together, and so we're really trying to dig in on those. We're getting a lot of reps inside and some jog throughs on the system offensively and defensively, but being outside and the timing elements of situations, those are harder to walk through, because these 7 seconds have to be done and executed at a really high pace. So we've been really pleased with the work that the guys have been putting into that spot.
And today they did a situational drill where it was 28 seconds on the clock. You have 4 downs to score a touchdown. No, I guess technically you could have gotten a first down. But from a timing standpoint, you really only got about 4 plays, and you got no timeouts. And it's a touchdown to win. So you're down 20. I think the score they put up on the scoreboard was 20-14. Might have been 26-20, whatever it was. Need a touchdown to win. 28 seconds. How do you do? And the first group got 4 plays off. The first group was actually the twos. Jaden Daniels at quarterback and second string O-line and skill position players. And the series ended with a dropped interception in the end zone on a jump ball situation. So it wasn't like Jaden made a bad read necessarily. I'd have to go back and be able to have the tape to be like, oh, yeah, that was definitely the right throw to make. But he picked a matchup. He threw a jump ball. Receiver fell down. Nick Whiteside dropped the pick. The rest of the defenders yelled at him because he dropped the pick. And the coaches were like, good job, at least you won the game. So this kind of tells you the mentality that the players have right now and how much they're really geared towards trying to create turnovers. The second group only got off 3 plays because got a tackle in bounds on 3rd down as they tried to rush to the line for 4th down. I guess technically they got a play off. I actually don't even think they got it off, but the call on the field was a false start because the team wasn't set. So Marcus Mariota and company were not able to get in the end zone. It's a tough situation. Down, touchdown, 28 seconds, no timeouts. That is a brutal, brutal drill for the offense. And in some ways, I give credit to Jaden Daniels for how he executed it because they at least got 4 plays off. And on 3rd down, that included a throw through the uprights because he just needed to throw one away and stop wasting time and not risk a sack, not risk anything. And so the situational awareness, you pass the process test, you got to ultimately finish the execution. Obviously, with Mariota, he on 3rd down throws a ball out to the flat, and I don't know whether he anticipates Austin Eckler getting out of bounds, whether it was on the far side of the field, so it's hard to say whether that was a bad decision by Eckler or by Mariota. Should Eckler have been able to get out, whatever it is, but tackled in bounds, and ultimately the clock runs out without ever getting to take a shot at the end zone, which you could also reframe as good job defense, which brings us to
number 4.
And Joe Witt Jr., the very passionate defensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders, spoke today after practice. And I thought, he was very reticent, as he should be, to give away any kind of detail. I think he's probably overly reticent to give away, like, literally anything. But, okay, fine. In his words, other people are listening. Sure, fine. Okay. What they are building here is not Dan Quinn's defense, not Joe Witt's defense. It's something that will fit what they have. It will be the 2024 Commanders defense.
No, it's fun. This is the players' games, okay? And you're going to hear me talking about feed the studs, and we're going to design our defense. We're designing our defense around the players that we have. I think if you're just limited to saying, hey, we run one scheme and that's all we have, and no, you have the players that you have, all right, and you make sure that you are putting them in the best position to play high-level football. And we have really good players. And I'm excited every day to come in here and figure out what's the best way to use them. And one thing I want to say as well, we don't have 11 starters, okay? You're going to put this down, so don't ask me who's starting here. We have 17 to 18 guys. We're going to go out there. We're going to roll a deep crew and to go out there and whip people, okay? So we don't have 11 guys. We have many personnel groups, and now can they own those positions when we put them in there? So when that comes, don't ask me about who's starting, please.
Okay, Joe. All right. That dude is he is something. Firecracker. The intensity he has, just perfect for a defensive coordinator. I think, generally speaking, though, and we actually talked about this off the top of the show today, when he says, I got 17, 18 starters, basically, you see it. The way they line up, the different sub-packages. Let me see if I can name, like, 17 guys real quick to see if we can figure out who not that we're Joe, don't come after us. I don't want him coming after us. We're not trying to figure out who your starters are. I mean, we kind of are. But, like, guys that I think are in the mix based off what we see right now. Allen Payne, Armstrong, Furl. Anybody else on the D-line? I mean, Fowler, I'd assume, is in there.
Newton.
Oh, yeah. But he's not doing anything
He's not
right
healthy
now
just yet, but, like,
yeah, but I still think
rolls
he's
around,
clearly on line 2. I'm not even counting. I feel like most of these guys are going to be in the secondary. So, like, let's say there's 5 or 6 defensive linemen, but those edges are going to rotate a lot. But probably Newton will wind up playing, 50+% snaps. Then you've got obviously Wagner. You got Luvu. And then are the rest of the guys that can be considered starters in a sub-package defensive backs? Because you've got certainly Forbes, BSJ. One of those might wind up being Michael Davis. But then you've got Quan, Chin, Butler, Dominique Hampton. Like, all those dudes, Sainer still, all of those dudes played with the ones today. They're just rotate. They have so many different packages of how they can line it up. So, yeah, it's going to be really, really fun. And it also is going to make talking about it, like, it's going to to Joe Witt's point, it's going to make our job of, like, who are the starters as we get through training camp, which is typically part of the conversation, difficult. But at the same time, we also are going to see a team that is more prepared for multiple situations that an offense, or multiple different personnel groupings, etc., challenges that an offense throws at them, because they're going to have a bunch of dudes that they trust to be the answer depending on what personnel grouping they need. So that's cool. Big story of the weekend was Emmanuel Forbes, that photo that went viral of his very skinny legs. So I asked Dan Quinn about the build on Emmanuel and how that fits with what they look for in a corner, and if it's actually an issue.
First part is really, the ball skills. And at that spot, to be able to turn the ball over as a defense, that's something that you really want. And that's, I would say, his superpower, and the thing that he was so strong at. And so from there, you look for length. And so it doesn't always necessarily mean the size to it. And he's bigger than he was, for sure. He's worked hard on that this offseason to see that weight going up. But the length and the ball skills at that position, outside on that freeway, there's some real athletes. And you're just seeing more of this happen. You see some of the big numbers at contracts at receiver and corners. And so that position alone, man, it really calls for athleticism, the ball skills, and having that length to be able to defend some of the bigger players.
And that's the thing. We talked about this on Take Command this week. Like, Forbes has size. It's just length and height. He doesn't have a thickness to him that might be a problem in terms of getting pushed around and the physicality, but if he can learn to play with great technique and great anticipation and maybe get a little bit stronger, whether he grows or not, that could be enough. So that's, I think, something that's going to be fun to watch when they get in the pads in the fall. As for right now, they're out there running around with no pads, and he was perfectly fine doing his job today. Last but not least, Jaden Daniels not going to be wearing pads this weekend. No, he'll be wearing a baseball mitt, or he won't. He'll just throw a baseball without one. He's throwing out the first pitch of the Nationals game, and Dan Quinn was asked about that. Pretty funny way to end today's press conference.
We had a big discussion about that just yesterday, so all eyes are on that first pitch. And I asked if there was going to be some practice involved going out there. Oh, no doubt about it. So, yeah, we're expecting him to rip a strike on that one.
Hey, dude, you're the starting quarterback. Anthony, have you ever thrown out a first pitch?
I've never thrown out a first pitch, but I've pitched before in a game.
Okay, same. I pitched in, like, Little League and everything, but what do we got to do for the Hoffman Show? If there's anybody listening within our listening area, which means that Anthony and I could drive there, that would like us to throw out a first pitch Find HoffmanShow.com. We can double barrel it. We can both throw first pitches. Although I think both of us would want to throw from the mound. Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
What? Now I want to throw out a first pitch now.
Oh, you're very curious.
Yeah, I want to. Who do we think is most likely to have us throw a first pitch? I mean, obviously, Major League would be the Nationals, but I don't think that we're gonna it's much more likely that the fan side, because they're the flagship home. If the Wizards had some kind of ceremonial something to start a game, then
that would be dope.
We would be getting the call for that, obviously. But if there's a local high school wants us to come out, although I feel like the game time is tough because our show goes till 7.
And their games start at 4:30. I know Preps does.
I feel like we could get you to throw out a first pitch for Georgetown Prep. I'd catch for that.
Yeah, but it's at 4:30 though, so it would just.
Sorry, we need the day off.
Or we need a Saturday.
Sorry, CK. Anthony's got to throw out the first pitch at his alma mater, and I have to catch it.
Speaking of CK.
Oh, is he walking through?
Yeah, he was walking by.
Dang, he's there late today.
Yeah.
Boss is working.
Mm-hmm.
Love to see it. I mean, I hate it for him. I hope he gets to go home soon. I think that's what I meant to say. Anyway, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And coming up next, actually something the boss sent us today that I thought was a good discussion piece. I'm glad that he did. If you didn't hear Michael Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser on PTI talking about the entirety of the Caitlin Clark saga from the weekend with Kennedy Carter and the ensuing discussions, it's actually one of the best discussions that I've heard about it. So we'll play a little bit of that for you and react to it next here on the Team 980. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Don't forget, tomorrow morning, 9:40 a.m. on the Sports Junkies, massive announcement for the station. That's all I'm allowed to say right now. Just tune in at 9:40 tomorrow, and you'll learn more, so don't miss that. Right now, though, the Caitlin Clark controversy from the weekend, if you will, the Kennedy Carter incident and all of the conversation that has ensued, I feel like is finally starting to die down, and we'll obviously see what happens as Clark's next game is right here in D.C. We'll be broadcasting live at Capital One Arena before it and the game against the Sky tomorrow here on the Team 980. So if you're going to the games at Cap One and you get there early enough, try to find us, come by and say hello. But Anthony, the conversation has had a lot of nonsense, and a lot of that from ESPN, frankly. But I actually thought that Michael Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser, two of the most veteran sports journalists in the game, certainly not guys that nail every issue. None of us do in the opinion space. But I actually thought they had an intelligent adult conversation about this. They're receiving a lot of praise for it. And obviously a lot of folks listening are longtime fans of these two gentlemen, not only from their 25 years at this point on television, but their days at the Washington Post before Tony's obviously legendary show on this station, of which Wilbon was a guest frequently for years and years and years. And Wilbon just got straight to the heart of one of the key issues here. And I'll quickly say before we play the clip, I think that this is both complicated because it's multi-layered and there's a lot of different things that are happening, a lot of different people that have valid points on varying levels, and how you order those things does become important, but it also gets, I don't think it's a clean evaluation, if you will. But undoubtedly, when it comes to Caitlin Clark and a lot of the discussions around her, and especially when you bring Angel Reese into the conversation and some of the ways that those two women have been treated over the last years, for better and for worse, race is at the center of it. There's a huge element of that where it's something that Clark doesn't have to deal with or even benefits from. Not anything she did, just a fact of the case. And it's something that paints Reese in a very different light. And Wilbon was tired of people not talking about it and said this.
You know, Tony, I don't want to start with a game, a specific game or a specific number of points.
They're both a minute and a half.
Because the discussion about Caitlin Clark needs to be much larger than that. And it needs to be much more nuanced. And it needs to be honest. And it's not honest. It just isn't. The discussion about Caitlin Clark has to deal with, and I mean initially and loudly, race. Race and culture in America. That's part of this. And basketball is the place, Tony, where it's more often discussed historically. Yes, it started maybe with Jackie Robinson and with certain prize fighters, Jack Johnson, but it's been a basketball discussion. When it was about Larry Bird and Magic Johnson and the sort of enemies they were before they became deep and abiding their friendship. But I mean, I remember with Spike Lee, an important part of his movie making dealt with Bird and dealt with a white star basketball player in America, because there ain't one on the male side. It's Caitlin Clark. And it's okay for people to admit that they identify with some. I identify with people, maybe part of why I identify with Edmonton or people like Evander Kane and Darnell Nurse, who are people of color. And so it's okay to identify that. You're not going to find that white American star in men's basketball. Caitlin Clark is that. And she brings people into the tent because she's great and she's unique. In this case, she's white. In a sport of black people. That's part of the deal. Part of the deal.
No
a big
argument
part.
on any of that.
Elephant in the room.
He's could not be more correct. We, as a society, black, white, whatever other cross-section you want to make, like novelty. And a white player being the best player on the floor in basketball, which in college she was, is a novelty. It's not something we're used to seeing. It's something that the closest we've come to seeing it in the NBA and anything that is remotely as popular as what the W and what NCAA women's basketball has been the last couple of years now, the closest we've seen to it in terms of star power is Larry Bird in the 80s, where he wasn't, the best player. But it caused debate because he might have been, but it might have also been Magic, and the debate between the two and how that cross-section America was a thing. There's also, I think, an element here to the style in which Caitlin Clark plays, which has a brashness to it, which has a skill level to it, both of which are appealing qualities when it comes to star power, that separates her from, say, Brianna Stewart. Because Stewie's been the best player in the sport for stretches of her career. She was certainly the best player when she was in college. I mean, she won 4 national titles. But Stewie did not have the star power that Caitlin had, in part because she was at UConn, and UConn was just coming off of the Maya Moore era, where they also won nonstop. And so there wasn't as much novelty to, oh, here's this white girl taking a traditionally not dominant program to new heights. That is unquestionably a part of this story. And for what, like, if you look at the cross sections of the crosstabs, if you will, in the polling, God, what a DC dorkish term I just used. But if you look at the crosstabs for WNBA popularity, the actual biggest group of fans that already existed was black men. And so the gains that were to be had by the WNBA were with white people. And thus the natural familiarity for those of us that look like Caitlin Clark, that caused a lot of people that look like me to be like, oh, I'm going to watch this. And it doesn't make you a bad person or a bad thing. And that's why I appreciate Wilbon's commentary, because I feel like a lot of people probably react to that with like, well, what are you trying to say about me? And Wilbon's like, I do the same thing. Like, there are black hockey stars, and I look at that team and I go, yeah, that's what I want. Like, that's what I want to watch, because those are my people. And there is a natural tribalism that is a part of being a human being. And visuals is the easiest path of least resistance to that. Because you look at someone and you're like, that person looks like me, or that person doesn't. I think what makes you a good or bad person based off of that is how you then react to that. Like, if you treat someone who doesn't look like you, no matter what you are, no matter what they are, if you treat someone who doesn't look like you as a less than you and less than human, that's what makes you a bad person. Not for acknowledging that. Like, no one's asking you to stick your fingers in your ears and be like, la, 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 this doesn't exist. Of course it exists. We're adults. We have eyes. Race exists. Skin color exists. And in something as, in terms of who we root for in a basketball arena, like, there's a lot worse ways that we're divided, but there's also just like a natural comfort in familiarity as a human being. And I think that's what Wilbon's trying to say. On a baseline level, there is then a next level conversation to be had as to, okay, if predominantly white people are running the league, running the advertising, running all the things in a league where now all of a sudden it's like, oh, everyone pay attention because there's finally a white player. Well, then you're treating the black players that have been and the black players that are as that less than, and that is a problem. And that's kind of the next layer of the conversation. It's one thing to acknowledge the incredibly human familiarity complex that we're talking about here. It's then to go, okay, well, how is that actually impacting us? How is that impacting how we cover and advertise and market the sport? Who are we advertising to? And why? That is the next level conversation to be had. And that is, to me, that is the elephant in the room more than a simple acknowledgement that, yeah, there is a larger number of people that are interested, especially that haven't been interested in women's basketball because Caitlin Clark is not only white, but white, straight, and feminine presenting. It just is. But there's also another layer to this argument, or not to this argument, to this conversation that Tony Kornheiser brought up, a sports journalist who's been covering basketball and other sports for over 50 years. Here's Mr. Tony.
I've watched, I think, part of or all of almost every game she has played in the WNBA. I watched both games over the weekend. She is being deliberately hit, and let me stress, deliberately. It's a little bit more dangerous, a little bit more sinister than just a hard welcome to a new league. It appears that the intent sometimes is to injure her. And what's particularly disconcerting is when somebody who knocks her down is welcomed back by her teammates saying, yeah, congratulated, basically. It leads to two conclusions, Mike. One is the Indiana teammates, when are they going to stand up for Caitlin Clark? Because they have not done that yet. When are they going to do that? Or else they're saying to Caitlin Clark, we don't have your back. And if they don't have her back physically, why is she playing on that team? And two, is there a living, breathing commissioner in the WNBA? Because if there is, that person has to say to all the players in the WNBA and all the coaches in the WNBA, hey, we're not going to have this anymore. We're going to make sure you understand these fouls are flagrant fouls. They're going to lead to ejection. If they happen more than once, they're going to lead to suspension. This season cannot be the hazing of Caitlin Clark. And Mike, you and I both talked about this at length, and we understand why there's a lot of resentment of Caitlin Clark and how famous she is and how popular she is and how much money she makes off the court. Because everybody in the league wants that. Raise your hand. Everybody in the league wants that. But people in the league have to realize also that the eyeballs are on the league right now because of Caitlin Clark. So you can beat her in a game because you know what? She's not great now. She is not great now. You can tie her up in the game. That's why you just can't try to hurt her.
But Tony, Tony, you're not going to legislate this.
And I agree with Wilbon on that. I appreciate Tony's argument, and I think there are parts of it that I think are very true. There is definitely a higher intensity in guarding Caitlin Clark. And I think some of it is personal on some level for some players. There's also a basketball reason why this is happening, and this goes back to the nature of the league. There is a general culture in the WNBA that I think people got a first peek at with Diana Taurasi on the Diana and Sue show when DT was basically like, yeah, rookies don't come in this league and do well, and they're going to get welcomed, and it's going to be a rude awakening because that's how it works. It's not personal to Caitlin. It's just how it goes. And every rookie deals with it. And it was really funny watching all of the WNBA now veterans who have come through the league in the last 20 years that Diana Taurasi has been playing saying, yeah, most of our welcome to the league moments came from her herself. Nevertheless, other players. So there's a natural physicality adjustment from the Big Ten to the big time that you are going to have to deal with, and Caitlin Clark is learning that. There are I would say a select few that probably are jealous or whatever that are going a little bit further. And then there's kind of, I would say, the other two elements of this, which I've talked about a little bit this week. One, I talked about a lot. If you want to check this out at youtube.com/HoffmanWSports, we put this segment up. The reason the WNBA won't stop beating up Caitlin Clark is because that's how you beat the fever. She's not good enough to overcome it yet. And I appreciate Tony saying that yet. Like this is, when LeBron was playing in 2003, get your licks in because eventually he's going to be the best player in the league. I don't know whether Caitlin becomes that, but she's going to be an all WNBA player sooner rather than later. She's real good, but she's not great at this level yet. Get your shots in, and the rest of her team also stinks. So if you don't let her get off 6 threes, you're probably going to beat her, and beating her up is a good way to do that because the referees allow that physicality. And by the way, there's not anybody else on her team that is either stepping up to protect her from a physical standpoint or from a tactical standpoint. There is no, hey, let me make this easy pass and get the ball out of my hands and protect myself, and this person's going to make you pay. And then there's the Caitlin Clark effect in terms of social media, where all these players are on it, and none of us want to be on social media for the wrong reasons. And I'm not talking about off the court wrong reasons. I'm talking about she crosses you up, hits a step back three in your face, and now from ESPN and the SportsCenter account to Bleacher Report to Just Women's Sports to CBS Sports to literally every account that has the rights, and many of them who don't, to post that highlight is posting it. So you open your Instagram feed and all you see is you getting cooked. You're going to do everything you possibly can to not be that person. And that is a natural competitiveness that is within the realm of sport, but also without it, that is a factor here. And if the W wants to say, we're going to change the way we play basketball as a league, and we're going to tighten the screws, and we're going to do it for everybody because we think it's better for everybody, that's one thing. If you're going to do this to protect the golden goose, and I hate that language that some of these commentators are using, but protect the golden goose of Caitlin Clark, that's BS. You can't change the game for one player. You can change it because you think it's better for the game. And if Caitlin Clark's the first of many players that you want to protect as this skilled guard archetype of Caitlin, of Kiki Rice, of Juju Watkins, of Paige Beckers, of the next generation that's coming, you think that benefits the game? Fine. If you're just like, oh, no, Caitlin's not playing well and people are going to stop watching, even though everything that's happening is perfectly legal and fine and how we've done it for 25 years. Get out. Sorry, you missed me with that. You absolutely 100% missed me with that. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. I will say to TK's credit, to Mr. Tony's credit, if you see stuff that's deliberate, you got to call it right on the floor. And that's also, I think, a huge problem here is part of the reason this story spun out of control was the referees did not call a flagrant one on Kennedy Carter on the court on Saturday. And they do dumb stuff like call the second technical on Angel Reese last night and just make complete clowns of themselves. That's got to improve on a league level. Coming up next, though, we wrap up the show very quickly. I don't even know if we'll have time for real things. I guess you'll have to stay tuned to find out. All right, wrap it up here on the Hoffman Show. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Of course, we're on the Team 980 and on YouTube at the Team 980. Tomorrow, we are live at Capital One Arena ahead of the Mystics game against the Chicago Sky. Great opportunity for Washington to get their first win of the year, and we'll be there on Friday as well. Also, major station announcement tomorrow, 9:40 a.m. on the Sports Junkie, so a loaded day from morning until night here on the Team 980. Also, tomorrow, never read the comments. I got some other stuff planned that we can't talk about yet because it may or may not be related to that major station announcement. Anything else, Anthony, for tomorrow?
I don't have anything off the top of my head. Oh, I mean, Cap 1, you'll be there.
Yeah, I just said that.
I won't be there.
No, I'm sad about that. But you are coming after.
I am coming after. I will be there after.
So there's that. All right. Well, with that, then it's time for Real Things Real People Said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5-11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, we got two pretty funny ones. First one, I've been trying to get to this one for 2 days. Anthony, we're going JoJo first. On CBS Sports coverage this weekend of the Champions League final, Joel Embiid, noted footy fan, stopped by the set. And so just so people understand, the CBS Champions League show is pretty much as close as we have to Inside the NBA. It is an outrageous program hosted by Kate Abdo. Micah Richards is the Charles Barkley of the show. Jamie Carragher is there as well. They're very funny. They're also not nearly as tall as Joel Embiid, which became readily apparent.
How tall are you?
7'1", 7'2".
Let's see.
Really want me to stand up?
You've never seen a tall man before. What's up with you?
Let's go.
Wow! I mean,
Wow!
Can he beat that big lips?
Oh, God, you and I.
So they get on each other's shoulders and are still not as tall as Joel Embiid.
Beat that big man, beat that man. Hey, put on the basket shoe.
Oh, Lord.
Danger.
Those guys are funny.
They are.
I need to tune into that. Their little pregame and postgame show a little more.
Outrage. So there is an ongoing, you could probably get lost on Instagram Reels for hours. The introductions Kate Abdo gives them every single show, she just roasts them every single show.
Oh,
it's amazing. Speaking of getting roasted, I hope the NBA Finals goes better than this trip home for Jaylen Brown.
All right, we got my brother right here. I'm going to get him a 5-star meal right now. You know what I mean?
Brother Kristaps Porzingis. They're walking into an old
5-star luxury meal, American deli.
Old deli in Jaylen Brown's hometown.
Yo, my people. What's up, baby? You good?
They have no idea who he is.
You don't remember me? Nah? That's crazy. That's crazy. This my man's right here. You know what I mean? What's good, brother? This my man's right here. Feel me? Yeah, we go way back. You know what I mean?
I don't think I know you, bro.
Kristaps Porzingis, can't get anything past him.
Nah.
It was very, very clear. They're like, these dudes are tall and there's a camera. What's going on? Hope it goes the finals goes better than that for you, Jaylen Brown. We'll preview it tomorrow as well as be live at Capital One Arena. See you there.